All right, we're live for another episode of Keeping It Real here in sunny Hawaii. Anyway, I got Matthew Ferry waiting and holding, and I got Frank Klesitz, my co-host. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Jeff Manson, a Hawaii real estate broker and founder of Real Geeks. My co-host is Frank Klesitz. He's the CEO of Viral Marketing. And today's episode is Creating Sales Velocity. And we got Matthew Ferry. He actually wrote a book, Creating Sales Velocity, and it's the 10th anniversary of that book. So we wanted to have him on here. And real quick before I dive in, I'm all fired up and want to get dived in. But if you guys are just tuning into this, I'm skipping over my little housekeeping notes here. So sorry about that. I'm really excited to get going on this because this is going to be an awesome episode with Matthew. But if you're just running into this, keeping it real, and you want to get notified of upcoming events and past due ones, you can go to keepingitreal.com and opt in on the right side. You can follow the Real Geeks Google Plus or Facebook page because we always post it on there, and you'll be notified when we do. You can also subscribe to the Real Geeks YouTube channel. And just, I think, 2 weeks ago, Frank, we put it or made it available through iTunes on a podcast. So all the past episodes and any upcoming ones are available on iTunes. The show is Keeping It Real, but I think the best way to find it is if you actually go to iTunes and search Real Geeks, it comes up easier. So we've had a lot of requests asking to put it on a podcast because a lot of people don't have time just to sit there and watch a video. They want to listen to it while they're working out and stuff like that. So we're working hard to make these things available. We've been getting a lot of great feedback from many agents, and agents I've known for a long time that have been through Matthew's training and his father's training, his brother's training and stuff, and just really thanking Frank and I and guests like Matthew coming on and sharing, because the spirit of these is it's keeping it real masterminds, and that's what him and his brothers have always taught is, hey, get top agents, come on and share what you're doing and network, and let's help everybody get better. And it's all coming from contribution. And that's why I'm excited to have Matthew on here today. He's coached thousands of agents. I've been through his training, his OTP training, his productivity school training. He has a tape series over the phone training through, I think it's available through Mike Ferry organization, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And I think we're hoping that Sales Talk is too, because Sales Talk actually takes it even to the next level. I was actually reading my Facebook feed the other day, and a good friend of ours, Jeff Quinton, actually posted the other day. It was funny because I knew Matthew was coming on, and he posted the other day, listening to OTB for the 100th time, and it's still as good as it was, 15, 20 years ago as today. And I was like, oh, it's timeless, right? And it's all about creating sales velocity, but not creating sales velocity through just like reading a script and being a robot. It's creating sales velocity by coming from contribution and wanting to help and actually communicating people and listening to them. And if you actually communicate in a fashion that Matthew teaches and come from a place of contribution, you're going to build trust. And when you build trust, then you're going to start attracting business. So much business will be coming to you because of the trust you build from communicating properly versus just reading a script and being a drone or a robot. You know what I mean? So that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover some basics and then get in deeper. And I just want to share a quick story. I know I'm babbling a lot right now, but I've been in the business for 20-something years, and I've been following Matthew and his father and his brother and going through all their coaching and all that and the one-on-one. But when I first got in the business, I think I did like 33 transactions my first year, and I was living in Orange County, and I was listening to their tapes. I hadn't been to that was before the productivity school and actually even before the one-on-one coaching. But I've been listening to the tapes, going to like Superstar Retreat, the productivity, not the productivity schools. What's the other one your dad's still doing?
Action Workshop he used to do.
Action Workshop, yeah, that's like been around forever. And I was only 24 years old, and I started working expired listings and calling them, and and I had tons of enthusiasm, okay? And I was following scripts and doing the scripts and all that. And I probably wasn't doing a very good job, but I was young, enthusiastic, and full of energy, and I was competing against like Wayne Smith, Jamie Yang, what's the red hair that was in my market? Freeman, Cynthia Freeman, and all them. And I was young, and I was just new into he's cracking up, because Matthew knows all these guys from way back, from Orange County days. And anyway, I went on this listing appointment. It was an expired listing, and they were all interviewing. I was new to the business. I was excited. And I just kept hounding the guy, hounding him, and follow up. So I got an appointment. I go on the appointment. I go through the pricing and explain why his home didn't sell versus on all that. And I go through all that, and I had already dropped off my marketing package. And he says, okay, great. I'm ready to get going. Let's sign the paperwork, Jeff. And I was so young and inexperienced. I was just like, go, 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 go. I didn't even actually listen to the guy. I'm like, well, hey, I want to go over this marketing plan of what I'm going to do. And he goes, well, I've already read that. I go, but I really want to explain every one of those things that I'm going to do, because I'm excited to really do a good job for you. And luckily, the guy had patience. Had I been on the other end of that, I would have been like, you're not listening to me. I think you're the wrong agent. But luckily, they were in their 40s, they were patient, and probably had younger kids too. But I'm just explaining to that, but listening and actually paying attention and staying attuned of what the customer and actually communicating is very important. So I just wanted to share that. I got the listing, but I'm lucky I did, because I wasn't actually listening. I was just full of enthusiasm and energy. But anyway, hey, welcome aboard, Matt. I thought you'd get a kick out of that, actually.
Let's jump straight in. You know, Jeff, it was through those experiences of coaching some of the top agents in the world at those earlier times in my career, and helping them to develop their sales skills, that I began to see that it wasn't just enough to have sales skills. That here was one agent going through doing all the same actions. They're doing the same actions that the top producer is doing, but the top producer is getting a multiple on their result. The top producer is maybe getting 2x, 3x, 4x on the results, whereas this lesser experienced person might be getting 0.5x on the actions that they're taking. And as a coach, it was extremely disheartening, because I would be coaching you and saying, here's what you need to do. You need to do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, say these things, and then you're going to make the sales. And there were people who would do it, say this, say this, say this. They wouldn't get that many results. Then there's other people, do it, say this, say this, say this. Bam, the results would go through the roof. And it was about 1999 that I began to realize that there was a distinction that was unspoken, or nobody really had clarified what was going on with people. And the clarification that needed to come forward so that people could have an acceleration was perspective. It was mindset. It was how they were approaching, not necessarily the approach itself. It's what they were thinking about, how they were seeing the situation, that was really creating this explosion in results. And in 2005, I released a book that, quite frankly, I had written the book and kind of shelved it, and then one of my clients, Jonathan, had read it, and he just said, we absolutely have to put this book out. And I said, okay, great. I didn't really know anything about the book business, so we put the book out, and then it just started selling, and people started sharing it, and the rest is history. This year is the 10th year anniversary for creating sales velocity. Awaken your power to attract sales effortlessly. And what it's about becoming a conscious salesperson, aware. So what you began our conversation, Jeff, with the distinction of, I was not aware. I'm rambling. I want to push my agenda, and thank God the person was patient enough to just say, I'm going to let him do his thing, but I'm still going to sign. Most people don't have those patience. And if you are not able to get yourself into the present moment, you will miss hundreds of minute communications that the client is giving you that are going to tell you when to close, when to ask questions, when to back off, how to change your tone, how to change your words so that you can get results very, very quickly. In the end, the first point that I want to make for our viewer is that selling is not hard or difficult. You make selling hard and difficult. And you make selling hard and difficult because of some unconscious reflexes that are happening in the background. And one of the things that we do naturally is we resist people. We resist the way that they are. We resist their style. We resist their communication process. You may even be resisting the way I'm communicating right now. You may have resisted the way that Jeff started off the presentation, not even knowing it, just like, you know, what are they, you have these little opinions and whatnot that are running in the background. Frank will chime in later and, you know, ask some questions and help people on the chat, and you may autopilot, have these issues with the way, oh, look at the way him, look at how he looks, this stuff that it's just running in the background. That's the stuff that makes selling hard. People want what you have to sell. People want to sell their house. People want to buy a house. They want that. The question is, can you get out of the way with all the caca that is going around in your head? That's really what creating sales velocity is all about, is helping that to happen ASAP. So, Jeff, the first thing that I want to say to people is this thought, and if you're taking notes, you don't have to, but you know, I'm a teacher, so I'm always going to say write this down, but I'm never trying to command you to do anything. Do whatever you want, okay? If you're taking notes, this is what I would write down. I would write down, people are already a yes. When I would observe the top producing, the top agents in the country making their calls, and I got chances to observe them all the time, so I would go to their offices and do trainings, and we would call side by side, or I would be coaching them and they would send in the audios of them doing lead follow-up, or them calling their past clients in Sphere, or the listing presentations that they were doing. I got to listen to countless hours of people making presentations and talking to clients. And what I noted was that they believed different things. They saw it differently, and it caused them to come at the conversation in a much more empowered fashion. And the first thing that I always noted is that they spoke to people like they were already a yes. They didn't speak to people like they were going to object. They didn't speak to people like, this person's going to be a jerk and I need to defend myself. Instead, they spoke to the person like they were a yes, and then when they weren't a yes, they would deal with it from there. But they began by getting themselves into a place where they imagined that this person was going to say yes to them, and I would highly recommend that you begin to work on that mindset for yourself. The second thing is what Jeff talked about, and it's really it's what this entire video series is about that he is hosting on Google Plus and YouTube and throughout the internet. It's really about making a contribution. So I'd like for you to write this down, because this is the thing that I saw that the top agent was experiencing versus someone else who wasn't getting as many results. So write this down. Shift from making the sale to making a contribution. Shift from making the sale to making a contribution. So important, because if you're making the sale, that has too much of you and your agenda and your needs in it. We got to get your needs out of here. We've got to get your desires, your wants out of the picture, because in the end, the buyer and the seller don't care. The other agent doesn't care. Nobody in the transaction cares about your needs. Everybody is focused on their own needs. Now, I remember first beginning to teach this when I observed it in the top agents. It created this effortlessness and this ease in their presentations, and it was instantly disarming. People would open up almost immediately. But what I noticed is that when I taught this to someone who wasn't used to coming from a place of contribution and making a difference for people, their immediate feeling was, well, what about me? I mean, I'm just going to help everybody else. How do I get what I need? I need to fight for what I want. And what I found is when you fight for what you want, you create resistance. When you create resistance, you slow the sale down. And if you're unconscious, you fight for what you want, you create resistance, and then you get pissed at them. And the problem was you. You were the problem. Nobody's resisting you. You're resisting them, which is creating resistance, and then you blame them. Now it takes tremendous focus and awareness to be able to come to that conclusion, because you have to go to what I call radical responsibility in order to get there. Jeff, anything that you want to add about that thought before we jump to the next point?
I think you're right on, but it's hard for somebody to figure out how can they get there. Do you have any tips or things that they can start getting there? I mean, yeah, somebody naturally wants to help somebody. That's easy, but it's not easy for we're in a pretty selfish world. So, and everyone's thinking about themselves. So how can somebody, or what could you tell or give some sort of advice to help get them make that shift?
Yeah, to become a lot less selfish in their approach.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Yeah. There's really one technique that you can use very simply to immediately move from a self-centered position to a position of appreciation and acceptance, and that's probably what I need to say first. So probably the first thing is that the way in which you're going to get to a state of contribution is to move into a state of appreciation and alignment. And appreciation and alignment are extremely, extremely rare. We very rarely appreciate other people. We very rarely appreciate their style, their way of communicating, the words that they use, their perspective. We're just not trained to do that. We're trained to be drones who follow the family protocol that we were conditioned to believe is right, and it really gets in our way. So the game that you play is you start to intentionally appreciate the quirkiness, the differences, the unusualness, the weirdness of the clients that you are working with, and probably the fastest way to get into that state of acceptance and appreciation is through a process of basic mimicking, mirroring, and matching. So I think that we could probably say it in this way, that mimicking and mirroring a person is the fastest way to demonstrate to them that you accept who they are. And acceptance is the most desired experience or state on earth for any human being. So to be accepted is what almost every human being you meet is devoting almost all of their time to achieving. So when you take on actions that cause them to feel accepted, when they instantly feel accepted in your presence, they immediately open up to you. They immediately reveal things they wouldn't reveal before. They experience the state that they are searching for in the way that they dress, in the way that they talk, in all the actions that they're taking. All the actions that a person takes, if you look at them, they're correlated in some way to being accepted. So if you can make them feel accepted, they will open up, and this will orient you into a more contributive way of operating. So how do you do that? Well, you work on being like them. You move the way they move. You talk the way they talk. You use the pace that they use. And I want to talk more about that later. I want to really zero in on exactly how to do that. But in the meantime, I'd like to focus on this point. I think that this point is a mindset shift that will really help you to move into a more easy, effortless, enjoyable state. So I just write this down. No trust is available. No trust is available when you're making the sale for you. So this is a practice, Frank. How do you get there? You actually have to practice accepting that they will not work with you. You have to practice releasing your attachment to getting the sale. Because if you can be in a complete state of detachment where the only thing you want to do is get the outcome for them so that they are happy campers, and you don't need anything in return, you will receive almost no resistance from them whatsoever. The resistance that you receive from a for sale by owner, from an expired listing, the resistance you receive from your Real Geek leads when they are on email or on phone calls, or the resistance that you get when you are with a person at an open house is not them. The resistance is actually residing within you, and it's causing resistance in the environment. If you will detach yourself from the outcome and shift your mindset into a state of just seeing how you can help this person get what they want with no agenda whatsoever, it is mind-blowing how much money you can make in sales. When you don't need it, that's when you get it. When you need it, that's when you don't get it. Sorry. That's just the way it works.
And therein lies the challenge. I mean, someone gets into real estate, you may have no money, you need to get, you're spending money on leads, you're spending money on MLS dues, and you got to get these deals to close. That's when it has to be hard to shift that mindset to truly helping. And that any tips you can get away from that? Like I remember being in those situations.
I got one tip here, and it was a book that Matthew recommended in one of the trainings. It's a little one. It's easy to read. I don't like to read big books. It's called U Squared.
Oh yeah.
U-Y-O-U with a little 2. U Squared by Price Pritchett. Along with going to get Matthew's book, I'd go get that book because it's all talks about doing things differently, and it's right in line with what we're talking about. Wouldn't you say, Matthew?
It is absolutely in line with what we're talking about. I'm just pulling up for you my releasing attachment procedure because really in the end there's a process that you need to go through to release attachment, and when you do that, it's just magical what happens. So here's my 5-step process. First, I examine the benefit that I'm afraid of losing. Then I identify, how am I exaggerating this benefit? Because always, Frank, I'm spending money on leads. I'm brand new in business. I need to get this going. Right, that whole thing. What happens is my mind, which I call the drunk monkey, is very catastrophe averse, and it also it's very imaginative. It creates catastrophe that really isn't there. So almost always what's happening is, in my mind, I'm exaggerating the potential negative outcome of not getting what I want. So if I can come to a place where I realize what the exaggeration is, and I can identify how losing the benefit is actually going to affect me without the exaggeration, then it's easier to make peace with that. And that's really the next step. So I examine the benefit that I'm afraid of losing. I identify the exaggeration. I investigate how losing the benefit will actually affect me. I make peace with it. And then as soon as I make peace with it, I can set a new intention. And typically that intention is autopilot. Is autopilot going to be an intention to want to contribute and make a difference? I just want to help these people get what they want. And, you know, it'd be great to get paid too, but I'm willing to let that go. It's sort of like coming to peace with the fact that you get what you put out. So if you're putting out fear, lack, and freak out, you're not going to get happiness, prosperity, and abundance. Sorry. You can't plant wheat and get corn.
Yes, you can't.
Does that make sense, Frank?
That cleared it up right there.
Okay, great. So here's another tip, okay? And it is really important that you examine, again, the point of creating sales velocity is about creating a contextual shift. Like you change the way you're looking at the situation. And when you change the way you're looking at the situation, think about it in this way. My perspective determines my emotional state. My emotional state influences the actions that I'm going to take. What most people are trying to do is they're trying to change their emotional state to get new action, or they're just trying to change the action altogether. So they go, well, here's what I need to do. I need to put this new accountability in place to change my action. Well, that works for a while, but really what there is to do is to change your perspective completely. As soon as I change my perspective, my emotions shift. As soon as my emotions shift, I now go into action. So the point of reading Creating Sales Velocity, why I wrote it, I actually wrote it in a semi-hypnotic fashion, meaning when you read it, it's really designed to change your brain around. So here's one of the things that I want you to start working on shifting your brain around to, and that is this idea. Give up your ideas of how this interaction between you and the client is supposed to be. So what happens is this, Frank, you get some leads, you call them up, and the person is, in your opinion, in your view, they're kind of grumpy. Yeah, can I help you? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. They have a style that for you comes off as grumpy. But guess what? In their family, that's just the way they talk. In their family, that's how they are. When I talk to Jeff, Jeff has a perpetual little clearing of his throat. At Alta, just all the time. Just he just has that going on.
It's
Yeah,
annoying.
the whole hangout.
Yeah,
At
sorry.
all times. And not even in just the whole hangout. He has that when you're talking to him on the phone too, right? He has that when you're hanging out with him.
Oh, now he muted himself. He made him feel bashful. That's okay, Jeff.
That's not a bad thing. It's a particular thing that he has. If I went and hung out with his family, I would be willing to bet that his kids have that little too. And I'd be willing to bet that his father and his mother has those little, they do it and they have their own version of it. In their family, that's their style. What happens for me, what I have to deal with, just like what our viewer is dealing with right now with me, I have a particular style of communicating. So they're having to deal with my style, and they think that I'm supposed to communicate the way that they were trained by their parents and their community to communicate, but I don't communicate like that. I got my own style. So when I communicate in my style, it's confrontational to their style. If you're in the sales business, you have to deal with the fact that you're holding people accountable to communicating in a way that doesn't exist. And you have to let that go and just be completely open to all the weird, freaky, wild, crazy, strange, annoying, agitating styles of communication that are out there in the world. My style is agitating to a lot of people. And other people's style is naturally agitating to me, but I've spent the time to understand that people communicate in different ways, and I've spent the time to understand that the way that people feel honored and respected and appreciated by me is when I add in my own little in my communication.
So,
and I begin to honor, acknowledge, and appreciate Jeff, for example, for exactly who he is.
So if we're hearing you right, and I think I'm hearing you right, but I'm hoping that they're hearing you right, is you got to get yourself out of the way, quit blaming them, start communicating like them to make them feel more comfortable, and then you're going to build the trust. Therefore, you can start helping them and communicating instead of just blaming it on them. You got to start taking responsibility about making people feel more comfortable and get where they're at and get your freaking, basically be selfless. Like Frank said earlier, stop being selfish and start communicating like them, and the barriers will just melt away.
It is absolutely mind-blowing. You know, when in Rome, do what the Romans do. And we got to bring that, Jeff, all the way down to the most basic level, because I was raised by different people than you, and you were raised by different people than me. So when you communicate, the back part of my brain right here is assessing, is this an enemy or is this a friend? And if you communicate differently than me, the possibility of you put in the category of enemy goes way up. And how do you know if someone has been inadvertently put into the category of enemy by the back part of your brain, which I call the drunk monkey? You know that because you don't feel comfortable. You know that because you feel a little bit stressed or a little bit anxiety, or it's a little, you're not quite, you're not jiving with the person. If you're not jiving with the person, it's very, very simple. You're resisting them, but you're pretending that it's them, and it's not them. It's you not taking a moment to assess the drunk monkey has declared this person is a potential threat, and I am now experiencing a threat biological sequence in my body called stress. If I have stress, that's because I feel threatened. And if I am feeling threatened, it's because something about that person is triggering me into that response. And if I'm unconscious about it, I'm going to blame them. And if I blame them, we got nothing. What responsibility does is put you in the driver's seat of making things happen. And if you watch a top agent is willing to bob, weave, flex, adjust. They're constantly adjusting to every single person that they come in contact with because they're using something, typically even unconscious to them, called radical responsibility. Radical responsibility is being responsible because you said you'd be responsible, and that's it. So that's the game. That's the game.
Agents that drive different cars depending who they're going to see, dress different ways. Not to say that they're a different person, but just to make the person feel more comfortable.
Right, but you know what comes up, Frank? What comes up when you say that is the person who has not yet experienced the profound difference that this can make. That person immediately says, am I being phony? Am I being a phony then? Am I being a fake? And the answer is yes, you are. You're being a phony and a fake all the time. Constantly. You're constantly being a phony and a fake. Non-stop.
Yeah, but it's selfless. It's because you want to make the other person comfortable, so you tone your style down.
Frank, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying you're a phony and a fake now. You're just unconscious. Because if I take you and I move you, if you live in San Diego with Frank, and then I move you all the way to Mississippi, Frank, how are you going to be talking in just a few weeks?
Probably talking a little slower.
All of a sudden, you got a little bit of a draw, don't you? Everything's just slowing down, and the way you pronounce your words start to change.
Yep.
And if I then move you to Brooklyn, New York, next thing you know, you're talking like this.
You're drinking coffee.
You're having some
Is that Brooklyn? That's Long Island.
Whatever. You get what I'm saying. Wherever you go, you will autopilot adjust. When you're with your children and they can't speak yet, how do they make friends? They go to the park and one kid dives on the ground, so your kid dives on the ground. And then that kid jumps up and runs over the slide and goes down the slide, so your kid runs over and goes down the slide. Now they are inseparable. They can't even talk. They're just little. But this is how human beings naturally connect with each other. And I'm not asking you to be phony. What I'm asking you to do is to get over yourself and to get over the fact that you are conditioned to behave in a particular way that's appropriate for your family. But it's inappropriate for almost every situation. It's appropriate for your family, but it's inappropriate for almost every other situation. And that's confronting, and I apologize that your way of communicating is not right for almost everyone. But you should know this, and no one's going to tell you. No one's going to look you right in the eye and say 99% of the people that you communicate with can't stand being in your presence. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the way it is. Unless you can adjust. And you know this. I mean, Frank, you go to a seminar, you're sitting in that room in the seminar, and then if you go to like one of my seminars, I'm going to say, all right, I want you to go and introduce yourself to people you don't know. Your natural inclination is to go find the people that you do know, which is a real small group in that seminar. And most everyone else, you're willing to communicate with them, but it ain't comfortable.
That is correct.
That's how everyone's feeling about you too. They're willing to communicate with you because we live in a very polite society. They'll even be polite most of the time, but it doesn't mean that they like being around you. So learning to give up your style and adjust to other people's style, it's mind-blowing what happens. So I want to have everyone focus in on this other really big idea, okay? And that is to shift from feeling out of control to controlling your feelings. You got to learn how to get your feelings under control, which means you have to learn, and I say you have to, but it's not really true. It's just if you want to get the kinds of results that a top agent gets. So I'll give you an example of top agent results. I might have one client who, tracking their numbers, they have to talk to 120 people in order to convert someone into a deal. Whereas I have a top agent may have to talk to 15 people to convert someone into a deal. Now, that is a tremendous efficiency from 120 down to 15, but I can guarantee you, if you will take on the things that I'm talking about right now and take on the stuff that I talk about in creating sales velocity, you can reduce the amount of effort that you're putting in and convert at higher levels and multiples. And one of the most important things to have that occur is to be in a state of non-reaction. That means that you have to practice being unoffendable, which means that you actually need to work to accept the situation exactly as it is. In fact, my company was really founded on a principle that that guides everything that I do and everything that the company does, and I want to share that principle with you. And if I was sitting in your seat and I was learning right now, I would write this principle down and then I would hang it up in front of me on my bathroom mirror and I would just absorb it over and over and over. And here's what it is. Practice total and complete acceptance of all people in all situations at all times, including yourself. Practice total and complete acceptance of all people in all situations at all times, including yourself. And Jeff, I mean, buddy, if you look at what you've been working on as a salesperson, as an entrepreneur, in the expansion of your funnel, meaning when you first started, you used to be able to deal with like this group of people. But then as you became more mature and a better salesperson, you could deal with this many people, and then that many people, and then that many people. The expansion of your funnel is opening wider and wider and wider and wider and wider, and the expansion has really been driven by your ability to accept other people, to accept their faults, to accept their insanity, to accept their ups and downs, and to accept your good, bads, rights, or wrong. What do you have to say about that?
I would say that's 100% true.
And it hasn't been an easy journey, has it?
No, it's a learning process, and that's one thing I do want to say is this stuff's not like you can't just listen to it. You got to keep working at it. You know, when I first started the business, like I said, I did like 33 transactions, but that was basically just brute, just work. I had this work ethic like crazy, but once I was able to start communicating at a higher level, I could list 75, 85 expireds a year. Yeah. And people dread calling expireds. I was talking to a guy the other day, and I basically told him that if he doesn't learn to start liking to communicating and talking with people, he should probably get out of the real estate business. And he said, do you really like calling those expireds? They're pissed off of that. I said, I'm telling you one thing. Expireds, the more they resist, the better they are. Because I would just if they were pissed off, I'd get pissed off with them, not at them. And Matthew knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. You know, you get pissed off with them or what you. I was just coming from help, and I love calling the expireds because it was was almost like a game, because like Matthew said, I was just trying to help people and trying to mirror match them and just come from where they were, accept who they were, where they're coming from, and try and see it from their point of view. And then just, yeah, if they were mad, I was like, yeah, I know. Can you believe all these freaking agents are calling and dropping off packs? Next thing they'll know, they'd be dropping off, flying things over in a drone. They didn't have drones then, but if I was calling expires today, that's what I would be saying to those pissed off people. And when you can start communicating at a higher level and coming from contribution, it makes it a lot easier to ask for the appointment. And when you ask for the appointment, they're just like, yeah, come on over, Well,
let's give them some specifics, okay? So this is right from Chapter 6 of Creating Sales Velocity, and it's all what Jeff was just saying. It's about harmonizing with people so that they release their fear and resistance. And it really comes down to this. If I came walking into your office with a big black and pink mohawk, you would instantly have an idea about who I was and how you were going to treat me. Though it's not likely that you've ever met anyone with a black and pink mohawk before, your mind instantaneously correlates all of my behaviors and makes things up, creates an assumption about who I am. Well, the same thing is happening on the phone. So when you're talking to people on the phone, they're listening to the style of your communication, and then they're coming up with assumptions, and it's completely unconscious. It's not something that they're consciously doing. It's an autopilot program that's running in the background to discern, are you part of the tribe or not? Are you safe to be around and communicate with or not? This is so important. So what you can do is begin, we learned this from initially from the therapeutic NLP community, neuro-linguistic programming, really began to unwind why was it that some psychotherapists and hypnotherapists were so successful when others were not. And what they found was that the people who were very, very successful were the ones who could get people to open up, relax, and start to communicate. And ultimately what they distinguished is that all of that came down to, does this person unconsciously believe that I'm part of their tribe? So there are some simple things that you can do to let them know that you appreciate them, you appreciate the way they talk, you appreciate their style, you appreciate who they are, and appreciation is so valuable. So the first thing you need to do is you need to adjust your rate of speech to fit with them. So when I'm on the East Coast and I'm doing an event, I typically speed way up because they talk a lot faster. If I'm down in the South, I'm going to typically slow down. They speak slower there. If I'm in the Midwest, I begin to adjust the way that I speak depending on the audience that I'm speaking to, because it depends on how close I am to the city or how far out into the country I am. But they all have their own various speech patterns. It's the same thing with your clients. Every person you talk to has a particular pace, and if you'll adjust to them, it makes all the difference in the world. The second thing to look at is their tonality. So their tonality, my tonality tends to be pretty nasally. So you have nose, throat, and chest. Some people speak in their nose. Some people, they have, they're a little more Kermit the Frog-ish. And then some people are down here in their chest. And everybody's different. So you'll notice that Frank, Jeff, and I all communicate a little more nasally in our style, which makes it easier for us to come together and communicate. But all of us have the capacity to go down into our throat or go down into our chest, depending on who we're communicating with. Now, if you want to get a little more intense, you can go to inflection. Inflection is how long or short they hold out their vowel sounds. A, E, I, O, U. You can also add in some N, some M, some S, some R. But everywhere you go, people have different lengths. So some people hold out their letters just a little bit longer. So when you're communicating with them, you want to say, I'm in your group. I communicate like you. You can trust me. Their brain is looking for, is this person a part of the tribe? Because I'm telling you, Everybody in their world communicates like that. All their friends and family, the close people, all communicate like that. In fact, if you've ever met someone at a party and instantly hit it off with them, and we videotaped that interaction, what we would see is you walk like them, you talk like them, you move like them, you spoke in the same way, you had almost identical speech patterns, and that's what instantly endeared them to you, because the security system back here, the drunk monkey said, part of my tribe. My mom talks like that, my dad talks like that, my husband, my wife, my brother, my sister, my friends, they all communicate in that way. He communicates in that way, she communicates in that way, this person is one of my people. We want people on the phone to think that exactly. So rate of speech, tonality, inflection. If you really are getting brave, you take on their pronunciation. So how do they pronounce their words? Do they say car? Do they say ka? Do they say garage? Do they say garage? How do they pronounce their words? And everybody has their own little things, their own little ways that they change their words, and in their family, that's the way you say it. So in their mind, that is the way you say it. And the way you say it is the wrong way, just so you know. So you adjust. And people say to me all the time, Matthew, aren't people going to think that you're mimicking them or making fun of them? And the answer is, if you're uncomfortable communicating in their style, it will occur to them like you are being inauthentic. So you actually have to practice being flexible and adjusting, because if in the background, in your mind, you are resisting the way they're communicating, but you adjust anyways, they will instantly say, this person is making fun of me, and they'll catch you. But if you are authentically doing everything possible to appreciate and honor who they are, they will instantaneously connect with you. And that's exactly what you want. I remember doing an event in India, and I looked back at the video, and I was doing half the event in an Indian accent. And nobody got upset. They didn't say, why is he talking so funny? It's just like, oh my gosh, he's talking normal. For them, that's the normal way to talk. If I take you to the South and you start to speak with more of a Southern accent, they don't get upset. They go, finally, he's talking normal. So you got to remember, you're the weirdo. You're the freak, not them. You're the intruder. So your job is to adjust to them. Finally, the thing that Jeff was talking about was to shift your emotions. And when you shift your emotions, it's so key, because human beings accidentally believe that the emotions that they're experiencing are what reality is. That's not true, but that's a different conversation, okay? It's very important to know every human being you come in contact with thinks that the emotions that they're having is what reality is. And if you don't connect with someone on an emotional level, you know what they say? You don't get me. Or even worse, you don't get it. At all, you don't get it. And really what they're saying is, you don't see the world the way I see it, therefore you don't feel the world the way that I feel it, therefore you are experiencing an invalid reality. So when you call an expired and they're mad and angry and upset, if you don't get mad and angry and upset with them together about their situation, well, then you are the enemy. Can you imagine your friend is upset about something and you're like happy and cheerful and peppy? Your friend would be like, get out of here, I can't deal with you right now. But you'd never do that with a friend. If they were upset, you would be consoling them, and you know, what's going on? You would go into their mode with them. That's a natural thing that you do, and it's the thing that we have to work on doing with all of our clients. None of this is possible unless you begin to shift from selfish to selfless. So Jeff, that's all I got to say about creating sales velocity today. There's a lot more, but you know, we don't have another 2 hours to be sharing stuff.
We got 10 minutes for some questions.
Yeah, and what Matthew just said is 100% right on. I moved from Santa Cruz. Well, I first started in Southern California, then went back up to Northern California, and then I moved to Hawaii. And I cannot pronounce the streets because they have so many darn vowels, but I could talk like them, the rate of speech, and I was nailing expired appointments like crazy. I was going on listing appointments. communicating in the way they did. They thought I grew up here on the island because I was communicating with them, making them feel comfortable. I didn't dare try to pronounce a street when I was going over the CMA. I just said the 4-bedroom, 2-bath over here, this 3-bedroom, and I was getting listings, but it's because I was communicating at the same high level that Matthew had taught me through all his training. So it does work, but here's the deal. You got to work at it like anything else. And you can't tune in if you're reading a frickin' script like a robot. You got to know the script, and you got to internalize that stuff. You just can't communicate at this level if you're reading something. You're worrying about what you're going to say next because you're not thinking about the person. You got to really listen to the person, come from contribution, so you can build the trust and really help them. All right, let's open it up to. This has been phenomenal. I love it. He's kind of preaching to the choir, but here with me. So I'm all in heaven right now. But hit some questions there.
Yeah, so the highest voted one's from Jason Cox. Hi, Jason. My partner and I are starting from scratch and need to better understand how to ignite the sales. We have a Real Geeks website and do PPC and have a social media presence. Where do we start to create the velocity? And I think this could be a good, solid recap. Someone's starting off from scratch, got a Real Geek site, doing pay-per-click, got some social media. What do they do to ignite it, Matthew?
Well, let's be honest. I can have my Real Geek site cranking, bringing in leads, and I can be emailing them and blah 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 blah. But nobody is making any decision about me until we are talking. And the way that you are going to ignite this business is to get over whatever reluctance you have, pick up that phone, and call all those leads. Call everybody that you can and get yourself ignited. The fastest way to make money in this business is to make phone calls, period, end of story. That is like supercharging the business. Now, the key there, of course, is that your mindset stops you from doing it. So go to my website at Top Agent Mindset, topagentmindset.com, and on there I have some articles, and one of the articles is all about call reluctance, and I've got a ton of articles and videos on there to help you get ignited, to get started mentally to do what is obvious in this business. And what is obvious is you gotta friggin' talk to people. If you don't talk to people, you ain't making money. Sorry.
And you got to communicate at the level we're talking about. All right, Frank, what's the next one?
Matthew, what's your book again? Deborah asks.
It is Creating Sales Velocity. Creating Sales Velocity, Awaken Your Power to Impact Sales Effortlessly.
Where can they order that, Matthew?
They can just go on to Amazon and get it there, Amazon.com.
Okay. All right, cool.
Ronald says amazing. Got voted up, so thank you, Ronald.
Thanks, Ronald.
Let's take a look at here. Okay, here's an interesting one from Olga. What about my Eastern European accent? No matter how much I try, I can't completely remove it. Even if I adjust to their style and the speed of speech, any U.S.-born and raised client will hear that I'm not from their tribe. How can I get them to open up? Wonderful question, Olga. Wonderful question.
Really important. Olga, I cannot tell you how many non-English speaking clients I have trained over the years, literally thousands. And I remember, one of my favorite clients was this incredibly dynamic lady, Li Wang. And Li, when I met her, Chinese lady, I think she was doing maybe 15, 20 deals a year, which is fantastic. But she really wanted to go to the next level, and she said, I'm gonna tease her a little bit, okay? So just roll with me. If Lee was here, I would do this right to her face because her and I are buddies, right? But she said, Matthew, I make the call. I call people, and they hang up on me and tell me to go learn English. And I said, all right, Lee, here's what we got to do. A, we got to get the scripts down. So she really worked hard to get the scripts down. And then B, we began working on mimicking, mirroring, and matching. And Lee today, to this day, incredibly strong Chinese accent, very strong. And yet She mimics, she mirrors, and matches. And at that time, she was able to build her business all the way up to 100 deals a year and make $1 million a year, selling real estate, doing all cold calling, and
Wow.
mimicking, mirroring, and matching. So there's something that happens. Yes, you have your own accent, but the intention alone, Olga, just the intention to connect deeply, to honor, and to appreciate them is more powerful than the accent that you have and what's coming out of your mouth. The intention to honor and appreciate and accept is more powerful than the way in which you communicate, and it'll adjust your communication. You'll naturally sound more like them with your accent.
Mm-hmm. Great. Tom asks, I don't know if you touched on the body language, but how important is it to match and mimic body language? Want to talk a little more about that, Matthew?
100% powerful, so important. With body language, you're going to do head nods, shoulder shrugs,
Yep.
facial expressions. You're going to do those instantly. When they do them, you do them. When they change their body position, you're going to wait about 10 or 15 seconds, and then you change your body position. Gesturing, you only do gesturing when you're talking. It is freaky for you to gesture when you're not talking. Don't do it. You will repel people like there's no tomorrow. So, that's all. I cover all of that in Chapter 6 of Creating Sales Velocity, so check that thing out.
Wonderful. That's all the questions. Repeat the website one more time, Matthew.
They can check out my latest work at topagentmindset.com, and they can pick the book up if they go to amazon.com.
Great.
All right.
That's
hey,
it.
I want to.
Jeff, let's wrap it up.
All right, great. Yeah. All right. I want to thank Matthew for coming on and joining us again. And also, you can go to keepingitreal.com, and we have the other the call reluctance. He has a book on that and some writings on that. But we also did a hangout on call reluctance back, I don't know, a couple ago. And then we also did one last November on top agent mindset too. On creating the top agent mindset too. We did that last November. So you can go check those out on Keeping It Real. And I just want to thank Matthew for coming on and contributing and sharing. And I know that I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure there's a lot of agents out there that did. And if you just take these practices that he's talking about, read the book, study it, go to his website, learn more about this, and just start communicating like this, you will start doing more business. But you got to start taking responsibility for your communication. You got to stop blaming everybody else, okay? And when you do that, you'll have a huge shift. And thanks again for Frank and his team for helping put these on, and we'll see you next time. Aloha.